Japan's Prime Minister Shinzo Abe will make history by becoming the first Japanese leader to visit Pearl Harbor later this month. He plans to arrive without notice, very early on a Sunday morning, while everyone is still asleep. The Trump Report starts now!
You're tuning into the destination for TV superfan discussion, AfterBuzz TV. And now, let the buzz begin.
Yes, that's right. Welcome to the Trump Report. Secret Agent Man, because there are a list of people, another group on a long list of people who are a little dissatisfied, disenfranchised by our president-elect, the CIA. So here's a nod to them. Secret agent men and women, secret agent persons.
Thank you.
Everywhere. I know that that's important to you, Chelsea. Welcome to the Trump Report. As I said, I am Christian Bladt, at ChristianDMZ, on the Twitter and the Instagram. To my left, if you're watching on YouTube, and you should be, camera right, Chelsea Galicia, at Chelsea Galicia. And at the other end of the desk, Scott Moore, at SMan80. We were supposed to be joined by Stephen Helmkamp again, and he stood us up, except he's actually sick. Allegedly, he will be with us tomorrow. Not tomorrow, but next Tuesday. No, tomorrow is when he'll show up. He'll be like, hey guys, I'll get a text. What happened, y'all? But don't forget to follow the Trump Report on Twitter, at Trump Report ABTV, as in AfterBuzz TV. You can follow us there, like us on YouTube, comment, please rate us on iTunes, subscribe, all that good stuff. All that stuff helps the show immensely. And speaking of
that with such anger.
Yeah, I know. Speaking of things
Conviction.
speaking of things that help, Kanye West visited President-elect Trump at Trump Tower today. This is not the biggest news of the week, but it's the most amazing news of the week, because only in America can you basically go directly from the psych ward to sitting down with the president-elect. And I think there's nothing surprising about that chain of events going from one to the other. But he said, Kanye did, I'm just here for a picture. So
I thought they spoke on multiple.
No, they did.
They
But
were
that's
talking
what,
about life.
that's what he originally said. They talked about life. And for those of you in the chat room and those of you who are watching this or listening after the fact, you can tweet us at Trump Report ABTV. Who do you like less, Donald Trump or Kanye West? That's not easy, because as soon as you think you have one, but then you're like, but. So
I don't like writing essays, but on that one, I could write an essay.
750 words.
Yeah, probably.
Okay.
Oh, easily.
So it's just interesting, and I guess it's never surprising. There's nothing. I don't know. Okay, I have one thing that was surprising this week, which we'll get to in a second. But this was not it. Chelsea, you hear that the president-elect puts aside time for Kanye West, and Kanye West puts aside time in his schedule for the president-elect. That's nothing anymore, right? I mean, it doesn't mean, that's not even remotely surprising.
It actually just feeds my little fantasy.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. Don't get too excited.
I know. I was like, what?
Stephen will be upset he missed the show. Go ahead.
And if this kind of, I know we try and keep it really classy here, but shit show.
Yes.
Surprising things left and right happening all the time. It might not be that surprising that the Electoral College saves the day.
Right. Well, here's the interesting thing, and I was going to talk about this later.
I was going to mention another thing
That's
real
the
quick
only
before you got
thing.
there.
Okay, so do you want to speak before I talk about the Electoral
Yes,
College?
well, because there was a funny thing. There's actually this little ebook, and I don't know if you guys have heard of it, by Richard Hine, and it's basically like, if Kim Kardashian saves the world, and it's this whole silly, and at the time it was actually kind of funny because it was like Trump was president, and there was this whole like crazy thing going on, and Kim Kardashian's like part of this secret, she's very smart, and she's part of this secret, like sort of like a CIA, but on the side, and there's a whole story with her and Kanye. So now seeing this, it's like, oh my God, Richard Hine's book is becoming reality. I couldn't even finish it because it was too real.
It was too real.
It was too real.
But see, and then that ties back to Secret Agent in our story.
Right. See,
so
it all. It's connected.
there's obviously been a lot of talk about the Electoral College, and that is coming up on next Monday, which could make our show really interesting next Tuesday.
Fabulous.
But
Come
it'll give us a couple of interesting conversation points. But as we've talked about before on this show and the previous show, Trump versus Hillary, people who are rooting for them to pick Hillary Clinton is basically rooting for people to uproot the system that is in place.
But not really, because that's kind of their job.
I mean, I can see the point that people have when that's their job.
Like, I've already fantasized
know.
about the very first sentence in the document that they draft up, because, you know, there's going to be a public statement made about it, and it is like, the purpose of the Electoral College is. And then, if a statement starts with that, it's good news.
Right.
But I was going to say, but here's the part of the problem is the fact that, as we know, the electors that are chosen to go and actually vote are the one are now, you know, like in Michigan or Wisconsin, are picked by the Republican because they're the winning slate. So you have to get enough of those people
I
to
think,
change.
though, what I'm thinking is that as these cabinet picks come out, that even these people are horrified.
Wow.
Well,
And so that won't be the stated reason that they give for flipping, but it will give them such anxiety that they will find it in their hearts to switch sides.
well, the way we talked about this last week was the idea that they were trying to find a Republican who was more acceptable than Trump, because just voting for Hillary
Come on,
Clinton
Hillary
is
is a
not what they're doing,
Republican.
because people pulled levers or did ink blots or touchscreens for a Republican. So, and that was the whole thing about John Kasich, which obviously
Right.
no one wants John Kasich to be president either. So I understand your point, and I understand why people want to do it, and I understand why our pal Drexel Hurd, who was with us on Trump versus Hillary, I think he has that day circled, Tuesday, December 20th, and he is excited to be here in the studio with us for the Hillary report. I think in his mind, that's what's going to happen. He'd be very excited to join us.
I know. I wish if it was close. Let's say it was 272 or 2. You know, I would feel more confident that yes, we could get a few to flip.
But it's
the fact that it's
309.
306.
Or you're right, 306, yeah.
And I know there's already the one in Texas that said he's not going to, but also there's one for Hillary in Washington State that's claimed she's not going to vote for her either. So then it still equals out. So I mean, I get it, and I'm hoping, like you, because that's the original intent of the Electoral College, is to not be a rubber stamp.
Yeah.
But what's happened is that that's what it is, and you have to get enough of these Republican people to switch.
But now we've got another factor, the Russian hacking.
Well,
Is
of
it-
course.
or is
And
it
that's
a
our
thing?
overall
Yes.
theme for the episode, the CIA. So the Electoral College members, it's not really an actual college, sort of like Trump University. It's not an actual college, and it's somewhere that they would like information about that Russian hacking. So they would like CIA briefings for, you know, hey, tell us what happened. Give us clearance on this one issue, short term, because we feel like we need to know. Because if there's actual tampering in place in those states, now, I don't think that's enough time. I don't think that if that is uncovered, that it would actually be something that you could know in the next 6 days.
What do you mean uncovered? I thought they had already.
Well, they've already. Well,
Basically.
I mean, there've been a lot of.
But trying to see if Trump was directly involved and all these other things that they still
There's a
haven't been
lot
able
of
to
people
prove yet.
saying that it happened, but I don't know what kind of evidence there is. You know, it was like Hillary's emails were a thing, but I don't know what it said in them because I didn't read it. You know, it's like people voting for a stimulus bill before they've actually read it. You know, so they're all saying like, well, this must be happening because it's possible. You get enough people saying this could have happened, then everybody's like, well, now we need to wait. And I understand why people who were not Trump supporters have this somewhere in the back of their mind. And that's where it should be, because if you have all of your hopes, all of your I can only get out of bed because this might happen next Monday, it's going to
How
probably
do you know
hurt.
my diary?
I just, let's just say 1234 is not a good password for your iPhone. But also, I just think that it's not the thing, you know, I think it might actually hurt more than Election Day for people who are like, oh, okay, we have a reprieve, there's a chance.
Yeah.
Because
Right.
there's not a chance.
Because then once
It's
that's
not gonna
done,
happen.
there is
Yeah.
no chance. Like, this
And-
is the final, like, you can still hold
And
hope
then-
that it can
but
happen.
Then people are like, oh, he'll be impeached. But if he doesn't get impeached before these cabinet members are confirmed, it doesn't matter.
Well, let's talk about these cabinet members.
Well, I was gonna
because,
say-
Do we have to?
No, I know, because they're so awful. No, I was
well,
going to say
there's one that's amazing. But anyway, go ahead.
there was this whole thing, I think it was the Washington Examiner that had a thing that supposedly Richard Nixon wrote Trump a letter back in like 1987 saying like, oh, he's going to be president someday, and then supposedly Donald Trump wants to frame it again. I don't know if it's true or not.
Wow.
But in my because it was like forever ago, but it made me laugh because I thought, well, then maybe the only thing they'll have in common is they'll both be forced out of office too. So that would be very fitting.
Cute.
But
Well, let's talk a little bit about some of these picks. I said a few minutes ago that nothing surprises me anymore. There was one that surprised me. Rick Perry. Rick Perry would head an organization that he said as a candidate that he would abolish. And it's just amazing.
You can't make that up.
On some level, I'm like, okay, now Trump's just messing with us.
Yeah.
Like, he just thinks it's funny because, you know, my favorite, and I know that this is a sexist term, but my favorite thing about Rick Perry was when he started wearing the smart girl glasses. You know, the non-prescription glasses that sometimes women will wear so that they're taken more seriously. And
What they do? I've never.
And men
I
too.
gotta get myself
I was gonna say
some.
and men too.
but see, you don't need them.
You're already smart.
Yeah,
So you'll
exactly.
be too smart if you wear
Yeah,
the glasses.
no. So if you start wearing smart girl glasses, just forget it. Well, then you'll be president. So see, then that'll be
I mean,
fine.
now I guess
There we
anything's
go. I'd vote for you.
possible. Thank you.
But
What cabinet seat will
will
Kanye, get? I think he could rival Carson for urban development.
Possibly he could also be Minister of Gold Digging. I don't know. I mean, I'm not
should
quite
open a new
sure.
one up, yeah.
Yeah, but what cabinet seat will Kanye get? Whichever one that Taylor Swift wants, then that's the one. that he'll take.
Jesus.
Say it still happens.
funny.
It's still fresh in our memory. But yeah, so we have Rick Perry. I can't wrap my head around that because, you know, a guy who's running for president who says he's going to name 4 agencies that he's going to eliminate, and he can only remember 3. And the other candidates,
that was the one he forgot.
The other candidates are trying to help him, and you know, it just doesn't come to it. And you're just like, all right. So all of a sudden now it's like, is that nominee to make it look better that he wants the ExxonMobil president, Rex Tellerson, to be Secretary of State, which, by the way, at least it's not EPA. He's Secretary of State, because if you had the head of ExxonMobil for the EPA, I think that would prove my theory that Trump is just messing with us. But these are the people that he knows.
This cabinet assignment
Yes,
means
already
he really
he
does
is-
hate us.
Yes,
Right,
he
but
is
these
just
are the people that
messing
he
with
I
us.
hate
knows.
the-
You know, I mean, Labor Secretary Andy Puzder, who's the head of Hardee's and Carl's
Yes.
Jr.
Oh my god, another
Doesn't believe in the minimum
terrible
wage.
choice.
Well, of course he doesn't believe in the minimum
No,
wage
because he has to pay
has
more money.
Hardee's and Carl's Jr. So, of course, he
So
believes.
everybody gets to look forward to being treated that way.
Yeah, well, we all get to look forward to being replaced by robots, which
Mm-hmm.
is one of the things that a lot of fast food companies say that they're doing. We were talking before
Mm-hmm.
the air before we went on the air, that it's very common now.
We're saying it's common, but in California.
Oh,
and
yeah, but
a
I mean,
couple
it's-
other states, not quite.
It's catching on
common.
though, and you know, obviously, you want there to be enough jobs for people who.
I think there's going to be a backlash to it because the grocery store, for example.
Right.
I do hate the
The self-checkout.
Not only that, but there's sometimes I want to find a person and ask
Yeah.
where something
Yeah.
is.
What I like
And-
is that at Target they have that phone that you pick up,
Yeah.
and that someone is supposed to come in less than a minute, and they're always so annoyed. And I was just like, "Yeah, can you help me find this?" They're like, "Yeah, it's aisle 24." I'm like, "So you're just gonna run and tell me? You're not gonna take me to it and
Yeah.
show me?"
Oh no, I guess that's not Whole Foods. Whole Foods, they'll take you right to the barbecue sauce you're looking for.
Well,
that's Whole
I
Foods.
think
You
Whole
pay
Foods,
enough
I was going to
for
say Whole
that.
Foods prices, they charge
They
enough.
should.
Yeah, exactly.
They should go back and make it for you too while they're at it.
Another recent nominee, Montana Congressman Ryan Zinke as Interior Secretary. I have no idea who that guy is, so
Me neither.
I'm just going to say he's the best choice because I don't know anything about him. Could find out terrible things about him, but you know what? I don't know.
After a while of reading about them, and I get
Yeah.
nauseous enough, I'm
I know.
afraid to open up a new one.
I'm too.
But, and we'll talk about all of those.
I figure if
as-
there's good news, word will
We're gonna
percolate down to me, and then I'll read it.
it'll be filtered out
We'll,
now.
we'll talk about all of those on the whole, but let's talk about who is left out in the cold, not getting cabinet positions or anything, any major appointments. CHRISTIE and Rudy Giuliani. They're not like, you want to talk about people who literally let the Trump bus run them over several times, back and
up,
forth,
exactly.
and back and forth. And they were out there so hardcore for him, especially CHRISTIE. I mean, it
Yeah.
was like he humiliated himself.
did.
Rudy was just kind of out there yelling. CHRISTIE was just, he literally stood behind him. And
Yeah,
you're
that
just
just
like,
and you just
yeah. And,
Ugh, yeah,
and
he
he
did.
gets
I
nothing.
can't get the image of Rudy Giuliani screaming and yelling at the convention.
Well,
out of
he
my
was
mind.
crazy too. Yes, but
But yeah, that's not the.
But-
look, I mean, crazy
come on.
people being appointed
Right,
to
but-
an elected position.
Chris
or, you
Christie
know, I
really
mean,
did have to like sit there and
I mean, he
take
groveled
it. You know,
and he
he's
took
in the,
it,
and in the back,
he,
like and
he gets
those-
nothing. Yeah.
nothing for it.
So I'll start with you, Scott. Your thoughts on the people who are getting these positions and the two big ones who aren't.
Well, and I was also going to say the third one because, you know, Mitt Romney also had to like grovel and went through this whole thing.
I felt very bad for that man. I was just like, what
For real bad for him?
I mean,
or like
for real bad because you look at him. I mean, look, you think of him. He's a successful businessman. He seems like a great family man. I mean, he has I don't know how many kids and grandkids. Let's just say 100.
Right. Yeah,
and
easily.
he's got you see. He's just a guy. I saw him as a dad and a grandfather who was being made to sit there by Donald Trump and basically eat shit for dinner.
Yeah.
And I felt bad for him, you know?
I did too, and I also feel like it took into his reputation too, because here he was like, I'm against Trump and was very anti-Trump.
He was really against
Trump.
Trump.
He went through all of that
sure.
again and basically kind of now he doesn't have any leg to stand on because he went through the whole and I get it's all politics and everything, but now to me I'm like he's tarnished his image by even associating himself with Trump and even going to do the job and then not getting like going through all the motions of that. And so I actually did feel bad for him because I never like disliked the guy when he ran in 2012. I just didn't agree with him policy wise, but I didn't think he was like a bad or scary person like Trump.
Right,
know?
I mean,
and I feel bad for him. I actually
there
do
were
feel
a
bad
lot
for
of
him.
people who talked about how President Romney would have been the end of society as we knew it, and now of course it's like, oh, if we could get a do-over and have a President Romney instead of President Trump, you feel like, oh, that just seems quaint. Sure, why not? But he could still get something, Romney. But you feel like, I feel like he was just paraded very publicly.
Yeah, it was
because he was a little.
Did
too
I read
outspoken.
one headline that said he was brought in to be interviewed just to be tortured?
Did you read that?
I've heard that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think Kellyanne Conway said that no, he shouldn't get anything because he was a little too outspoken. But I don't know.
I don't really have much great stuff to add to that because everything is just all of them are bad. Not because they're inexperienced. I mean, that is a critique, but if they weren't coming from such ginormous corporations that have done so much harm to the environment, to employees,
and to the world in general, like Rex, really? I mean, I can't even wrap my head around that.
I'm sorry, ExxonMobil is a big company. I haven't been keeping up.
Only the 8th largest in the world.
And they've done something to the environment?
The largest oil company. 50,
all right, I'm going to write this. I'm going to have to research this for
Yes,
next
I
week.
know,
I didn't know ExxonMobil. I only knew about BP. But who are some, you don't have to have names for people, but who are the kinds of people where, look, just taking at face value, we have President-elect Trump. Who are people that he would appoint that you'd be like, well, okay, this at least could work?
Okay, how about Elon Musk for energy?
Okay, I mean, he's a businessman. Right. Doesn't seem like Trump's kind of businessman for some reason in my mind. But sure, I could see that. I mean, especially for energy. But he doesn't seem like he's part of the. He's at the same country club as Donald.
I would have said like
Thank
maybe John Huntsman for Secretary of State,
which his name was thrown around,
but not seriously. I think as someone who could have the Republican credentials, being from Utah, being a former governor there, being a former ambassador to China that worked, but again he worked with the Obama administration, which already brought him down, for Republicans. But someone like that who's moderate and could speak fluently Chinese and would be a big part of, I think, continuing that Asia pivot that's so important for our country now.
Seeing as how we're going to be renegotiating all these trade deals.
Like I think someone like that's moderate, that's even tempered, that still has the experience would have been a really really solid choice. As being a Republican, that would have been a little bit more digestible for liberals and for other people that might be scared, but of some of Trump's other picks. But then when you go with Rex Tillerson, like you're just going completely. It just.
Well, how about the friend of Russia? What award did he win?
Yeah, like it was basically like the friend of Russia, whatever it's called. It's something like it's called. Yeah, like that. Yeah, and it is. I mean, they have. And again, how do you divest yourself from all these deals and things from being CEO of ExxonMobil?
There's no way.
There's no way. Even if you walked away and you're retiring next year, you still have stock. You have other. How do you divest yourself from all that?
He can't divest himself emotionally from the fact that he's been a representative of this company for like 38 years.
But Crimea, they were dealing with stuff with Russia with the Crimea annexation for their oil and money making stuff for ExxonMobil. So how can you just separate yourself. You can't.
No, it's
and he's
impossible.
has tons of stocks and other things vested, being obviously CEO of a huge, one of the biggest companies in the world. I mean, it's just it's
the same thing that Trump
It's awful.
is going to deal with. I was
right, of course, which has
hearing on the
canceled
radio
his
earlier
news
about,
conference on that.
you know, Trump supported the comments made by the president of the Philippines, the president who's going around and literally just killing anybody that they think is a drug dealer or a drug user.
Right, drug users, which can be addicted for things, you know, outside of their
Right,
they're not
and
bad people.
Just imagine what that would do to Hollywood. Oh, just
Yeah.
hypothetically. Yeah. No one I know. Don't worry.
No.
and that Trump supported his way of cleaning
Right.
up the drug problem.
Yeah.
Which, if you're any fan of the Constitution, should be a really
Right.
big problem, because even Scalia would agree that we have this thing called due process, and that's not the way we roll here.
Yeah, I think a lot of people would feel that that's not the way to handle that situation.
And then what's going on also in the Philippines is, wouldn't you know, there's a Trump project going on there.
of course, there's a
Of
Trump
course,
project
just
going
like in
on.
Taiwan when he
Yeah.
had the phone call, and you know, again, how do you separate yourself from all these entanglements?
Well, that's the thing. He's like, well, I'm not going to separate myself from these entanglements.
But the only thing I think that could be good that come out of this is that when, again, because politics is temporary, when it shifts again, this will be something that Democrats are going to make sure is ironclad for a future president. Like they will not be able to be above this conflict of interest that
I don't
supposedly
even
is
know
there.
if the Republicans really want to stand for it.
No, they won't now. No, because it's their person. But you know,
And it's already in the Constitution.
Right.
That you can't receive foreign money.
right, and that's
so
such a shady line there. But I know that when Democrats take power again, that's going to be something like you're not above the conflict of
So
interest because the you know, senators and Congress have to, you know, by law,
So the-
it's
the-
very vague for president. They're going to make sure you cannot do that in the future. So,
I think the plan should be that Congress, both Democrats and Republicans, just delay confirmation until Trump gets himself impeached.
Well,
that a
you
plan?
could be waiting for a long
Is that
time.
my new
that's-
fantasy?
I know,
That's
especially
a very
with-
difficult
yeah.
process when you consider the makeup of the people.
I don't
who'd be
think
Right.
so, because I don't think a lot of Republicans really truly like him.
Okay, but much like with
I mean, at least I'm hoping.
much like with the Electoral College, where
Right.
you don't necessarily want to be the one who flipped the electoral system on its ass. You don't want to be one of the, well, I broke ranks with my party so that I could impeach a guy who did a bunch of things
Right,
that
we
other
still- yeah.
politicians have done before.
But Mitch McConnell believes that the Russian hacking thing could be true.
well, only
That's
because
a
now
break.
because of the pressure that's been put on him, because all of a sudden, because
So
you
if
know,
we keep up the pressure, even Mitch McConnell, come on.
He want-
That's a pretty big effing
Well,
deal.
doesn't he want,
his
but he wants
wife is going to be
I was just
labor
gonna say that,
secretary.
yeah.
I mean, and he wants to have one power. That's his
Oh,
dream.
That one also makes
He's a
me so
windbag.
sad.
I mean,
Oh.
yeah. But he's not. I mean, that's the problem. Is
I was
that these
thinking
people
earlier,
are
I'm
too.
like, do I really wish for anybody's death? No.
I know. I feel like that's.
Wow.
I've been there now.
Incapacitation.
Yes, incapacitation.
Or he goes somewhere else.
I just wish he would just
Leave.
resign. Just
Who
quit.
do you want to resign?
Well,
Mitch
McConnell.
McConnell.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, because I was like, well,
Well,
that's
actually,
sort of
that's Mitch McConnell, Trump, Pence.
It's a pretty wide net, yeah.
I even think if Mitch McConnell fell, then Trump would fall.
I mean, I guess it depends on what it is. You know, I mean, at some point you're going to go down the list, and whoever the person that would step in
I mean,
would be somebody that you
why?
don't like.
Do you know
I know.
Kentucky has this country by the balls,
Kentucky, because
right?
that's Mitch McConnell's state,
Yes,
and
that's
also
Mitch
Rand
McConnell's
Paul.
state.
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
Kentucky, what the hell, yo?
Yeah. Where's Kentucky at? Is Kentucky in the house? Let us know in the chat room. I do want to move on because we've been talking a lot about the CIA, and the conversation about the CIA basically is this. Hey, there's some funny business in the election, maybe from Russia. We got to look at this. And Trump just says, I don't believe it. And he's now kind of dismissed the CIA, the Central Intelligence Agency, the people providing him information about our enemies and also about our friends. Let's not be naive. They also have people deep in undercover for friendly, I'm using air quotes for those just listening, for friendly nations. So, you know, they kind of keep you in check. And they're not people you want to upset.
Right.
Because you don't want to upset people who can shoot someone from half a mile away. Or worse, the people who can tell someone to shoot someone from half a mile away. And I'm not saying that's specifically in relation to the president, but those are just the president-elect. Those are the kind of things, like, those are people you don't want to upset unless you have to. And if you have a real problem with them, that's great. But he's automatically saying, like, yeah, I don't believe what they say. It's
But
like,
he'll believe the Russian, stuff before he would believe his own CIA. I mean, but American.
yeah.
By
Well, I mean,
putting
he
it back
probably.
on, well, I mean, it was just like just the way they were putting it back on the, he was basically discounting them because of the 2003 weapons of mass destruction
Right.
thing with Iraq, and so now he's like, well, what good do they really know? And I mean, we could go on about the fact he's not even getting daily intelligence briefings.
He's too busy.
Because he's too busy and too smart. I mean, that kind of stuff is very frightening to think about.
To your point that, he takes his information from elsewhere, maybe he does trust the Russian press. Because unless I'm mistaken, I think Pravda gave a very nice review to The Art of the Deal. So clearly, there are people that are friendly to him. But it's interesting that you're just discounting the CIA in its entirety. Because there are things that the three of us and everyone watching or listening to this right now will never know that the CIA found out. And they told a president. Right. And let's just talk about, in the last 20 years. Let's not talk about since its inception. There are things that they found that are probably very important, and by being able to do things, again, that we'll never know about,
Right, exactly.
kept us much safer, or, most likely kept us safer, but better safe than sorry. So, I don't know. I think it's, again, he's in a position, President-elect Trump, where he's always been the one who knows best. And so he's like, nah, these people don't know as well as I do. I have a feeling that Russia wouldn't tamper with the election. Because I don't know Putin, but I hear he's a great guy. So, I don't know.
Well, as it
All
goes,
the sense
exactly,
of-
and as it goes back to, it's now all on him and the Republicans. So they have no one else to blame when it comes into there anymore. If they're not going to be serious about intelligence briefings, if they're not going to be able to take this stuff seriously, it all falls on them, and it's an unfortunate thing, but it is now.
Tragically, we can look back on this moment where he wouldn't get intelligence
Right.
briefings and wouldn't make these informed decisions, and who knows what it is
And
that
it's to our own
know,
safety is to their detriment. It's
both
a scary thing.
Presidents Clinton and George W. Bush got all sorts of intelligence on Osama bin Laden, and they got it and ignored it. But
Right. But
to
at least they
possibly
got
not
it.
even hear it.
Right.
I choose not to think about it.
Well, no,
because
because
I don't
that's
want
what
to.
really scares me.
Yeah.
And that's what I've said to people is that I have not been as scared about someone being president as I have with Trump, where someone who wants to discount these things and where I feel people are going to be more emboldened to try to hurt us. And I've never felt that way, even when Republican. It's a different feeling from when a Republican has won in the past to now, because it's very frightening.
I don't understand how it makes any sense. He wants to be really aggressive in the world.
Yes.
And so you'd want to know who's like
Right.
picking a fight with you. And so you'd want the inside scoop. But really, why do we think he doesn't want it?
I mean, it's a great question. I don't know. Well, what do you think in the chat room?
It's unusually quiet today.
Well, Lauren's
Yeah, it
there,
is.
known as Call Me Slinky. She's also a fan of The Tomorrow Show and some other... She's a very big AfterBuzz supporter. I see Storage Yard Resident in there. What do you think? I know he was just there to say hi at the beginning, but he's been kind of quiet. What do you think of all these picks? Are these the people that you wanted? That's actually something that you
Right,
wanted
that
to
you
ask
wanna
him.
know. Are people that
Chelsea
voted for
wants
Trump
to know,
happy about
are
these
you
picks?
happy with these picks? And
Or not just happy with the picks, but specifically, do these represent a draining of the swamp?
Right, so you can look at it both ways. Do you feel okay about them? And look, just because you voted for the guy doesn't mean you have to think that everything that he's done has been great. It'd be interesting if you feel, I like this one but not that one, and the reasons why.
Yeah.
So Storage Yard Resident, you always have an open door to share your thoughts with us.
Respectfully.
Respectfully. Let's talk about some actual big news. I know I opened with Kanye, which is big news in a different way. Aleppo. Who wants to talk about Aleppo? I know Chelsea was interested
God,
in
it's so
talking about
depressing
it.
though.
Yeah.
It's like
But Russia declared today that the 4-year battle over Aleppo to turn over their territory to the Syrian government, well, it's over now. Syria's biggest city, by the way, in case anyone didn't know exactly what Aleppo was.
Gary
Which-
Johnson.
Gary Johnson, yeah. In
Thank
case
you.
you're listening,
You
Gary
both-
Johnson again.
No, I
to
think
remind you.
well, look, he's got time.
He does.
He's got
He's got plenty of
to
time
listen
now.
to us. So, whichever one of you wants to talk about your thoughts on Aleppo, and
Well, it's really
been
hard
this-
to talk about in light of the fact that we try
Yeah.
and keep this show so light and entertaining. To pivot to this subject is really a downer,
Sure.
but really something worth our time. So if you didn't know already, the Syrian government has just started going into people's homes and blowing them away.
Yeah.
82 people overnight died this way. And what occurs to me is all the people in the United States and in Europe too who are like, we don't want these people, send them back, send them back, send them back. All right, well, these people either stayed or did go back if they ever did try and leave.
Yeah.
And that's what happened to them. So if you believe in, I don't know, humanity, you're pro-life, and you were somebody who said send them back to this demise, I hope you rethink your thinking a little.
Right. I mean, I guess on the level that people don't necessarily want foreigners in their country. So then think about where you could send them. But
And then people, I believe the next thought is going to be, we'll get to that in a sec.
Yeah, we'll get to that in a second,
The next thought is going to be, well, it's not my problem, so why should I have to deal with it? Okay, selfish bastard. Number one, it kind of is your problem because things our government has done have contributed to the destabilization and the reason why Syria is in the situation that it is. So if you take any responsibility for your country, if you have pride in your country, you must also take responsibility for the actions of your country, I believe. And so in that vein, you have to give a shit.
right. No, and I mean, obviously it's an issue that unfortunately this is the way I have to classify it. It's not a sexy issue, so people don't pay attention to it. Gary Johnson didn't know what it is, and we make light of it that way. But in the serious sense of him not knowing what it is, he ran for president and didn't know what it was because there was the thinking that he didn't need to know what it was.
And so if this is your first time listening, caring at all about Aleppo and Syria, here's another connection. Russia and is very close to Syrian's leader Assad, and they're like this little terrorist duo out in that neck of the world, and they're a very scary, dangerous partnership, and one of them potentially messed with our election, and the other one is brutally killing its own people. I mean, this is a genocide. I don't know what
and
technically defines a genocide, how many people have to be killed, but I think this should qualify, and
it's heartbreaking.
I hope that more people
I hope more.
give a
Yeah, I
shit.
hope people and really realize what's going on with that because it got distracted again during the election with Trump being like the extreme betting and nobody wanting Syrian refugees, but they're not thinking about the actual what's actually happening to these people on the ground, and it is absolutely heartbreaking. And like you said, Assad.
Being in your house? I mean, I've had this nightmare. You're in your own house.
Yeah.
Someone barges through and just shoots you down, or they shoot somebody, your family down
Right in front of
first,
you.
and
Right.
then
Well, because
I'm not sure what's worse.
and I mean that's not even the fear of like a home invasion.
Right,
gone wrong.
that's like your
the government
the police
is coming in,
yes, and tanks and coming in and coming in,
and you hear it getting closer and closer. You hear it happening
Right.
to your neighbors, and then
It's-
there's nowhere to run and there's nowhere to hide. Could you even imagine how terrifying
and
that
thinking
would
your
be?
own government is taking you out. That's the thing, and your neighbors.
Well,
are-
and I think that's why people should try and at least understand the situation.
Well,
And I
understand
think-
why these people are leaving and escaping and trying to get there. And instead of grouping
I think
them as
anytime
terrorists
groups
and,
of people are leaving somewhere, let's find out why. Why do so many
People want
bad
to-
hombres try to get across Trump's wall? That isn't going to be a wall, and it's not built yet. But we only have a few minutes, so I very
storage yard
quickly
is
wanted to.
now.
I wanted to address one thing. Storage yard resident, you said that. It's actually not on the screen right now, but you said that Trump does get the briefings, that it's a fake news story, that he doesn't. I think, and again, I didn't take notes on it, so I felt like I read from a reputable source that he doesn't get them every single day. It's not that he skips all of them, but he doesn't go every day. I think he has people on his staff go, obviously, but I don't think he makes the time for it every day. I feel fairly confident that
think
that's
we
an
send it
accurate
to
story.
Pence.
Yeah, now we can take a look
Yeah.
and see, but
No,
obviously, and Storage Yard resident still feels pretty strongly that everyone needs to get on the Trump train and make America great again.
I'm looking
But
for really thoughtful
I know.
conversation.
Well, I'm just like, it's never going to happen for me, so
Okay.
I will
Right.
never be getting on that train.
Even if you got a free ticket for
No.
the Trump train, what about
Not
one of those
gonna
little
happen.
conductor's hats? Just something
Not
to think
going to
about.
happen.
It's going to derail.
I know. That's why I'm like, I don't want to be on it. I don't want to be near it.
Well, I
far
for
away
one,
from it.
let's hope it stays on the tracks,
Right.
Because I don't know how good it is for America if the Trump train goes completely off the tracks once he's president. And for those
Nowhere
of you
near it.
who voted for Hillary, just hope that it's a short trip. It's the Acela train that goes really fast between New York and Boston, so that it's a quick one.
It's a blur, and I don't even have to
One of the
see
things
it.
I wanted to talk about is, we were trying last week. We announced that we would have a weekly feature called Progressive Silver Lining. We kind of really don't have one, so we have the opposite, which is Progressive Buzzkill, which was the Louisiana Runoff Election.
Oh, yes.
Which I was in Louisiana over the weekend. Chelsea has a little cold. I lost my voice. Why? Oh, because I was in New Orleans over the weekend. But I actually went with a friend of mine when he voted, and the runoff election, people just don't know about it. So we went, I think it was 3 o'clock in the afternoon. There had been, he was the 80th person to vote that day. So people didn't.
Right, you're right. The turnout was so low, and some people were talking about that.
And it's interesting because if you get into a runoff situation, it shouldn't be hard. I mean, and I read that Foster Campbell, the Democrat, had raised like $2.5 million. So, in the course of a month, that is a decent amount of money, but apparently wasn't enough to suddenly make Louisiana blue. But the interesting thing about
Senate, they do have a Democratic governor.
Yeah. What I learned about
great.
Louisiana, though, is if you're a resident, a storage yard resident or otherwise, just a little joke for you, our friend there. But if you're a resident, you just live there. You don't have to actually have a driver's license there. You can actually go and vote, like my friend did, because he lives there, but he has a New York license because he's there for his PhD.
Because they're like, why else would you be here if you didn't live here?
Right. Well, I guess that's really the feeling. And I guess they have some kind of loose voter ID law, but he actually didn't have his ID on him. And he had a piece of ID, and they looked at it, and they were like, great. So it's not that hard to get college students to vote, is the point. So I feel like with $2.5 million, you should be able to sway one of these runoff elections because it happened in December. It's not like it happened when everybody's back home on break. And I don't know what the final numbers were, but as they were coming in, it was low.
No, it was incredibly. I don't have the exact numbers either, but that was something that was brought up. But I think part of the problem is again, it's sort of like talking about the sexy topic earlier. It's not election day. It's on a Saturday in December. And it doesn't have the same drive. You don't have a presidential ticket. You don't even have a gubernatorial race. It unfortunately doesn't have that same drive of getting people out. And it's already a Republican-leaning state, so I would have been hugely surprised if it had tipped.
Typically, people don't think I voted November 8th. I'm going to have to vote again like a month later. You just don't think about it. You just know who you voted for.
But if you've lived there long enough, you
know how it works and everything. And yes, it's not an excuse. And we have, people should be out to vote every time. I mean, that's the same issue we have here with the mayor's race and the citywide races for Los Angeles being in March. It's like it's not anywhere near anything else going on. It's in an off year, and they always talk about low turnout there. And really, there should be no excuse because you should be voting on your local level. That's the most important. But it's that same kind of thing. It doesn't get the attention that a general election does, or we even see midterm races are way lower than a presidential election, and that's horrible too. I mean,
when I've voted in non-presidential election years, it was a point when I lived in Hollywood, they'd actually be at a different place.
Yeah, exactly.
It was like at someone's
and
house,
nobody's
their garage.
Nobody's there in line. I mean, even this race for our last, the general election, the numbers were way down.
Yeah.
I mean, Trump got less votes than Romney did when you're looking at a GOP candidate. So.
In part two of We Wish There Was a Progressive Silver Lining, but there really isn't, and this other story will prove that to you, the 21st Century Cures Act.
Yes, I legitimately don't know anything about this, and keep in mind we only have 5 minutes, but you can
try and keep it really short and to the point.
I literally know nothing about this, and I said, great, talk about it on the show, because I don't want to learn about it.
So you know about cancer?
I've heard of it, yes, unfortunately.
And we want money to go to research, and so that sounds good, right? And we've got this heroin epidemic, this opioid epidemic going on in this country. Yes. So money going towards research and figuring out how to get us through this crisis all sounds good, except and other things of that sort are coming in this 21st Century Cures Act bill that Obama is expected to sign. It got such bipartisan support because what the Republicans got was the drug companies have a much, much easier time getting their drugs through the FDA approval process to be used on different populations than they were originally tested on and for different uses.
Okay.
So this is basically what we did. We allowed Big Pharma to hook us on painkillers.
Okay.
We let the problem go on long enough to where 30,000 people a year die and more become hooked every month. And then when things get so desperate, you know, people turn to heroin, and now we got heroin in white suburbia. Now it's really a problem. So we let that go on for a little while. And now when we really need to do something about it, Big Pharma says, fine, you can do something about it, but you got to make it easier for us to develop or make money with different drugs in different uses.
Right. Okay.
So make regulations easy for us, and we'll be okay with this, and we'll let you pass this.
Well, I mean, it's sort of a non-political issue, but I guess it is in terms of the big pharma, the big pharmaceutical companies. Just in general, a lot of times, for me, doctors will prescribe pills for something. And I was like, well, you know, I had problems with my back because I was carrying a 28-pound little boy, my son. And all of a sudden I was like, oh, I shouldn't lift him that way. And they were like, oh, you know, we can give you all these painkillers.
Yeah, they just want to give you
No,
pills.
and I was like,
yeah,
well, how about I
easily.
try physical therapy
Yeah.
first? Because I would rather do that. I would rather learn how to stretch and things like that. And then, oh my God, this was earlier. I'm having trouble sleeping. Great. Here's some Ambien.
Right.
No, I didn't want
Right.
that. I was just like, what should I change in my diet? That sort of thing. But you know, and not everyone, but there are plenty of doctors
Right.
that are very quick to do that.
Yes.
And that is the mentality.
It is, and then take another pill for this to counter that if you can't.
But I don't blame
yeah.
the doctors so
No,
much.
I don't. I don't. But what I will say
Well,
is that there
no,
are
but no.
doctors
But
that
that's a lazy way of some doctor, and they're getting the.
Well, the doctors don't have time to see these
and
people.
that's a whole other.
Right, that's
They're
a different
pushed
problem.
by Big Pharma this
Right,
way.
and
They're
the-
pushed
and-
by consumers who see it on TV, and
they're
they're
like,
like,
"We want
doctor,
this.
give it to me. If
we
you
want
don't, I'm
this.
going to switch to
I
another
don't care.
doctor who will."
Yeah, I don't care that the possible side effects in the commercial included rectal bleeding. That's fine. Just prescribe
Yeah.
that for me. But
There's
one of
a
the
lot of
the
issues with
smaller
all that.
issues is just in terms of, you know, I know a lot more parents than I used to now, and it seems like doctors are prescribing helmets for children that don't really need it. You know, if you get a helmet, it's because your child's, the back of their head is flat and you want to sort of round it out because
Right.
they slept on it, that sort of thing. And there are kids that, personally, I don't know that they needed it. And there was a mother that I knew, and she was told by a doctor, well, you know, I would do it if it was my kid, but I mean, if you want people to think you're a bad mother, I guess don't get it. And just because, and if you look at how much the doctors get and how much the pharmaceutical companies get
For the helmet?
for the helmet, I mean,
Right.
it's thousands of
Yeah.
dollars. It's unbelievable how much they are. And I don't know, that's a problem. I don't know what the fix is. It has nothing to do with Obamacare.
You
It
don't
doesn't really have to do.
Oh, I can tell you what the fix is.
Great.
Money out of politics. Ready
there you
for the
go.
list? Fix gerrymandering, fix the revolving door between lobbyists in Washington. I can keep going with the list.
Single
but
Boy,
I
if
payer
don't have
only,
health,
time.
single
if only
payer
we
health.
had, if only we had somebody who had talked about that during this election cycle. I don't know, somebody from Vermont. If only, Chelsea, we had somebody. But
only, if only.
anyway, if only we had more time,
Forever
dear
a
viewers
burner.
and listeners. But we appreciate each and every one of you. Alison Gianni for press secretary. That's the smartest thing that anybody's said. I absolutely agree with that.
Yeah.
But
Fake news. We'll have to talk fake news
we'll
next
talk
week.
fake
That's
news
a
in
whole
the
other thing, yeah.
future. I think that's
Obama signed that bill today.
Yeah, well, I heard he was going to sign it.
Yeah.
Oh, the 21st century.
Uh-huh.
Well, we'll give a follow up on that. And anyway, in any case, we'll be back next week. That'll be our last show for 2016. We'll be back 2 weeks after that. But we're gonna take some time off for the holidays, mostly because these studios are gonna be closed. And the people who work in them, the great people like Steven in the booth, who helps
right.
us out, they're gonna be having some time off. So good for
holidaying
them.
it up, too.
And also, I'm gonna be in Vegas with my family, my wife's family and my baby. So I won't be here on Tuesday anyway. So there. But that's the 27th. The 20th, we will be here, 7 o'clock. And as I said earlier, our friend Drexel Hurd is hoping that we'll be doing the Hillary report that night.
I think we're all
Don't
hoping,
hold
well,
your breath.
Some other people here are hoping that too.
Some
but-
people on the panel might be. Somebody might be hoping that somehow, through some inexplicable wormhole, we end up doing the Bernie report. But anyway.
I mean, I'm not delusional. I have fantasies,
But
but
you
I'm
could
not
wake up.
delusional.
You could wake up that. How about if you woke up that way? You were like, oh right, President-elect Bernie. Who knows?
I'd be very happy with that too. So
My
Well, at this
fantasies are
point.
based in reality,
Obviously.
Christian.
So
Yeah.
that's not. All right.
Right.
But we appreciate all of you who tuned in, and we look forward to seeing you next Tuesday. As we said, it was a little confusing what I had told you. Next Tuesday, the 20th, we will be here, 7 p.m. Pacific time, 10 Eastern. Allegedly, Stephen Helmkamp will be with us, and even though Scott won't be here, we'll ask him how he feels
Right.
about Trump not doing any of those press conferences that he was on.
Yes,
Hillary
please
for not
ask
doing.
that.
And we'll make sure that you get the answer. But for myself, Christian Bladt at Christian DMZ, for Scott Moore at SMan80, and Chelsea Galicia at Chelsea Galicia. Don't forget, at Trump Report ABTV. Follow us there on Twitter. Like us on YouTube. Comment, rate on iTunes. Just takes a few seconds to give us a review. We'd really appreciate that. And we will see you next Tuesday for the Trump Report.
From executive producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire AfterBuzz TV staff, we would like to thank you for listening to the AfterBuzz TV network. To watch or listen to other after shows and post comments or questions, be sure to visit AfterBuzzTV.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of AfterBuzz TV.
Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.